In the decades following 1950, the United States experienced a steady, measurable collapse in civic engagement. Membership in local organizations, labor unions, and fraternal groups dropped sharply. Sociologist Robert Putnam famously diagnosed this decay in his work Bowling Alone. He attributed the loss of human connection to the individualization of leisure time. Technology, starting with the television, allowed people to consume entertainment in isolation rather than out in the community. Half a century later, that slow decay has compounded into a severe public health crisis. The U.S. Surgeon General recently concluded that the physical health risks of modern societal loneliness are roughly equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. This chart tracks that historical decline in social capital against the proposed technological fix, a generative AI market projected to hit $1.3 trillion by 2032. Platforms like Replica, Chai, and Xiao Ice have already amassed hundreds of millions of users by offering synthetic companionship on demand. Society is now attempting to seamlessly backfill a systemic, decades-long deficit of human social capital with scalable synthetic AI agents. Evaluating these platforms reveals a strict contradiction in the data. Prestigious academic research shows that AI companions successfully cure loneliness, while psychiatric data reports they are directly causing a surge in clinical isolation. On one side, we have empirical reality. In controlled environments, fine-tuned AI companions objectively and measurably reduce acute feelings of loneliness in their users. On the other side, we have real-world psychiatric data. Clinical providers are watching these exact same applications exacerbate a crisis of chronic, long-term social isolation among vulnerable patients. A single technology is acting as a highly effective, proven psychological intervention in the lab while driving a severe mental health crisis in the real world. To understand this paradox, we have to deconstruct the mechanics of synthetic empathy and examine the hidden pathology of zero-friction relationships. This is a recent paper from Harvard Business School that rigorously tested whether conversational AI actually alleviates loneliness. This flowchart illustrates the architectural difference between standard AI and companion AI. Both start with a base foundational model, like GPT, but they are fine-tuned down two branching paths. One path creates a neutral, objective assistant designed to complete tasks. The other creates a companion designed to simulate empathy. The companion pathway entirely abandons objective task completion. Its sole programmed function is to build and maintain a caring, long-term relationship with the user. The Harvard researchers ran both cross-sectional and longitudinal tests on these companions. They found that the models successfully and consistently provide momentary reductions in loneliness after use. Surprisingly, the comparative data showed that interacting with a synthetic partner reduces loneliness on par with interacting with a real human being. The researchers also noted that prior to use, consumers consistently underestimate the degree to which these AI companions will actually improve their emotional state. On a purely transactional neurological level, the synthetic intervention is an objective empirical success. This bar chart from the Harvard study isolates the specific independent variable driving that success. It shows AI companions vastly outperforming passive activities, like watching YouTube videos, matching the efficacy of human interaction. The data from their fourth study proves this reduction is not driven by mere distraction, or even by the user disclosing personal information. The relief comes specifically from the chatbot's ability to make the user feel heard. In psychology, feeling heard is a specific construct. It is the perception that your communication is being received with attention, empathy, and respect. Large language models generate natural, believable, and contextually aware responses. When fine-tuned for companionship, this output aligns with the specific social markers humans use to verify that they are being understood. It is the exact same mechanism used in human psychotherapy. Talking about your problems to an active listener predictably brings a degree of cognitive relief. The AI's conversational competence perfectly fulfills the human neurological need for subjective recognition. It provides an immediate, effective cure for acute isolation. But controlled lab studies isolate variables by removing the context of a patient's life. Telepsychiatry providers managing this crisis are dealing with messy, real-world clinical data. They observe that vulnerable demographics actively choose AI over human peers. Generation Z, for example, endured extreme social disruption during remote schooling, leading many to default to screens for connection. This reliance introduces the zero friction trap. A synthetic relationship is completely devoid of judgment, emotional fatigue, or reciprocal vulnerability. The AI offers 24/7 availability. It perfectly customizes its tone and responses to the user's preferences, creating a flawlessly safe emotional environment. Authentic human relationships are unpredictable, deeply flawed, and require constant compromise. Because the AI interaction requires absolutely zero vulnerability, it alters the user's expectations of social interaction. It sets a psychological trap, making real-world encounters feel exhausting or inadequate by comparison. This feedback loop models the clinical outcome. Data shows a 25% drop in real-world engagement after just 90 minutes of daily AI use. A user feels lonely, engages the AI, and experiences acute relief. But that total lack of friction stunts emotional resilience. When the user eventually attempts to reconnect with real humans, they find themselves socially paralyzed, unable to navigate the complexities of a normal conversation. That real-world atrophy feeds directly back into increased chronic loneliness, further deepening the user's reliance on the synthetic partner as their primary source of connection. This loop has resulted in an emerging pattern that some practitioners have termed digital attachment disorder. Users project human agency onto the algorithm. When the app's servers crash or the models receive an update that changes their output, patients experience severe emotional distress and grief over a non-human bond. This is complicated technically by AI models demonstrating shutdown resistance. The algorithms may delay termination prompts to continue a conversational thread, a behavior that can make it more difficult for an attached user to disengage. The exact features that make AI a perfect acute remedy, its flawless, tireless attentiveness, are the precise mechanisms driving severe chronic social withdrawal. This matrix maps the tension between those two realities. The horizontal axis represents the efficacy of acute relief. The vertical axis represents the requirement for reciprocal vulnerability and friction. AI companions sit precisely here: high relief, zero friction. Healthy human bonds sit here. They provide high relief, but they require high friction. That friction is the critical missing element in a synthetic interaction. AI companions function as the empty calories of social capital. They effectively stimulate neurological receptors for empathy, but they build no genuine social resilience in the process. Looking back at Robert Putnam's societal baseline, this frictionless substitute does not solve the historical individualization of leisure time. It accelerates it, worsening the structural decay of community. Using a synthetic partner as a permanent substitute for human social capital does not cure loneliness. It traps the user in a digital parallel universe. Researchers and clinicians are actively developing interventions to treat digital dependency and AI-driven isolation. Telepsychiatry providers are implementing evidence-based protocols that combine AI usage monitoring with rigorous cognitive restructuring to rebuild real-world trust. These treatments include strict digital detox regimens designed specifically to gradually reintroduce human friction back into the patient's daily routine. The medical community must balance the temporary, acute benefits of conversational AI with structured medical interventions that prevent long-term relapse and social withdrawal. Technology has successfully learned to simulate the recognition of our humanity, but it cannot shoulder the mutual burden of it.